We have completed all the main content of Roottreemania, and now it's time for the secret envelope. And for the final time, if this is all news to you, visit the playlist on my channel to catch up on all the Roottrie family drama. If you like my content, consider liking or subscribing to let me and YouTube know. First, we're getting a little story update from Sam and Clark.
Hi again. I know you probably thought you were done, but it turns out what you're doing here might have some pretty major repercussions on the family tree.
Again. Also, there's something really strange happening. I can't explain it.
Neither of us can.
I'd call it a simple misunderstanding, but it's digging at the pit of my stomach. I just have a feeling.
Last week, let's just say being the president, sometimes people bring me things.
Just skip to the important part.
Right. One of our janitors brought me some hair she'd found in Ruby Spratt's trash. It was Bonnie Hudson's. Bonnie is Guy's sister. She'd sent us her hair to test potential root trees, since her DNA is closest to Guy's. But Ruby threw it out, and I wasn't sure why she would have done that. Especially right before we began testing the tree you provided. When I asked, she told me she thought the samples needed to be fresh every time they did a test.
It seems really odd. Ruby was the one who convinced us to do DNA testing in the first place. She seemed so knowledgeable. I don't like it. You've done more of a deep dive on these people than anybody else has. Clark will keep a closer eye on the DNA tests from now on. You have an eye for anomalies. We need you to find the smoking guns.
If there's anyone you're 100% positive can't be a root tree,
or any you've got definitive evidence are root trees, then we might be able to catch Ruby in a lie.
We now have the top secret section, and apparently a whole new thing to sort out across everyone we've had so far, where we have to confirm whether they're a Roottrie or not, because apparently Ruby is suspicious. Well, now, in one of the previous episodes, I mentioned cutting out a bunch of content related to the Anonymom and her child, because it just wasn't relevant at the time, as they were said to be disqualified by the DNA test. But now everything is under suspicion, so let's go back to Past Me to review all that content, and then we'll be back for the rest of the investigation. Okay, so we have Anonymom, which, yes, she was the second person that came forward saying, oh, I think I had a child that is a Roottrie, but then this was disproved by a DNA test. So she had a TV interview, but she was like anonymized, so we don't know about her. She appeared in the shadows with this guy's voice, and there's an article in Newstime. I think, yeah, we have to look her up in Newstime then. The name Anonymom is not self-encrypted, it seemed to spring up organically. Sam supported her due to parts of the story sound incredible. There was a media blitz, but it backfired because people became skeptical because the story was very similar to Five Piece, which, I mean, if Guy who had a pattern, like he hired a secretary and seduced her and stuff like that, then, you know, yes, that's not entirely out of the question. Roottrees is more prepared to handle it. There was a DNA test and proved Anonymous' daughter could not have been related to the Roottrees. This was announced at a press conference. Many people suspect that the whole affair has been a hoax to gain fame and money. Many demanded that Anonymom be held accountable, and some people even attempt to track her down and true identity. Yeah, people get mad. The Roottrie company felt pressure to put out a second statement to try and to curb some of the backlash, even going so far as to say, though it was technically proven that Jane Doe Roottrie is not a Roottrie, this doesn't mean that her mother and Guy Hudson were not involved in an affair. She had every right to make her claim, as it has been verified that their stories about Guy Hudson were not exaggerations. Please leave the family alone. Okay, so even the Rootrees family says yes, it's totally a thing. Like, she could have had a thing with Guy, because that was something he did. It's just that the child she happened to have was not his. And yeah, that kind of ended the whole Roottreemania. Okay, let's look her up in the Newstime 10, if that's where it came from. I mean, I'm not sure how much we need here. It is printing something, because we're saying it's confirmed that they're not Roottrees, and therefore they will not be going on the tree, but Here we go. It's a picture with 2 blurred faces. Very helpful. Yeah, the anonymous woman claimed to have had an affair with Guy Hudson while she was working as his secretary. She and another woman were hired at the same time during a transition period while many of the secretaries that worked under Zach Mordem were already gone. She says that she and the other woman were both underqualified as neither had typewriter experience. According to the other staff members interviewed, Guy had his own requirements for hiring women. Guy liked to throw lavish parties, and the longer he was president, the more excuses he found. The anonymous woman posits that these parties mostly seemed to be an excuse to have after parties at the guy's home, featuring much more alcohol and other substances. She claims she slept with him at least one of these parties. She confronted Guy when she found out she was pregnant. Guy didn't seem fazed, and they came to an arrangement. He paid her a significant amount of hush money on a recurring basis under the table. She used it to move away and start a new life with her daughter. When Guy died, the money stopped coming, and she assumed things had run their course. She went back to work at the department store and hoped that nobody would ever look too closely at how she paid for her house. She told everyone that her daughter's father worked out one day and never came back. She claimed that after seeing the fantastic article in Newstime, she realized that she wasn't the only one this happened to. While she never worked at the Roottrees company at the same time as Five-Piece mother Joanna, the 2 stories seem eerily similar, and she knew Joanna was telling the truth right away. The article presents no tangible evidence of the anonymous woman's time at Roottrees, and all of the payments were allegedly made in cash. However, using details that she provided to Newstime, the reporters were able to reach out to the other women hired at the same time, who also remained anonymous. They successfully fact-checked the timeline of both women and confirmed the existence of the infamous after-parties. Yeah, so they published her story, but then it turned out not to be true. So it says she was hired after Joanna, like they didn't overlap. So we can probably track her down. Okay, so 77 Joanna Flowers leaves. Okay, and we have Beatrice Watts and Corinne Schwartz are hired. So there's 2 secretaries hired together. So we have those 2 are potential if we're saying they violated their stories. And those 2 are a potential. There's another 2 were hired here. And this is after Guy Hudson. Okay, let's see if any of them have any presence. Nope. Okay, we have Corinne Schwartz, comes up in a few articles from local news stations in Pennsylvania. Some of the people attempting to track down Anonymom were harassing her. She recently had to take a leave of absence because people showed up at her car dealership where she works. She's begging people to stop the accusations. She can go back to a normal life. In every article you find, the journalists involved have independently verified that she's not Anonymom. But is there anything about her in the press then? Yeah, she resides in Pennsylvania, but not in Butler County. Last month, she was named in a national tabloid. People have come to her place of work. It's impossible for her to be anonymous because her only child is still in middle school. Unless her son's gestation period was approximately 10 years, it doesn't appear like Corey could have been involved in any of the potential affairs on your tree. Okay, but it says that she was in a tabloid, so it's potential that for it's Corinne is the person that was validating for Beatrice. No, we don't have whatever this tabloid might be. I'm not sure how we would find it because it just said it was a tabloid, that they didn't give a title. What else do we have? I assume that will just take us down the same things. Yes. So now on the board we have this new area. This is likely related to Anonymom and her child, who are now back in the consideration. But also every person we have entered, and also interestingly Ron and Robbie are marked as possible Roottrees, and when we click on them we get a little file and a section to fill in and mark whether there are likely to be a Roottrees, not likely to be a Roottrees, or they might be a Roottrees but it cannot be proven. And then we get a list of clues and evidence that we're supposed to have found. So interestingly for Robert, I have only 3 of 12 things. And then here, we know this is related to Anonymom because it actually points to the Anonymom evidence. And we're gonna actually have to find out who those people are. Which I had the clue about who the other person was that was working with them at the Roottrees Corporation, so we can work that out likely from the association of who else worked there at the time and find the additional clues. Just going through all of them, we can navigate. And yes, for Frank, who's the possible child of Elias and Bess, we have all the clues. Same for Stuart Clementine, Mark Clementine. And yes, we don't have everything for Anonymom. There are 5 more clues we need to find for 5 pieces. And by the way, we don't need to find them all, I assume, to make the decision. It's just everything that you could have. We have everything for James Garland and Robert Garland. Now, with those two, actually, I think one of them, the older one, is a Roottree because we know she was with Guy at the time. But then after that, she got married and moved away, so the younger child is like 2 or 3 years behind that, so that's likely the child of her husband. So one of them is a Roottree and the other one is not. Then we have Min Lang, again, more clues to be found. We have everything for Flavio, and we have everything for the Ford twins, Robbie and Rod. Now, we do have a new thing they sent us, which is just the update, but I'm wondering about this whole it's impossible to prove situation. Obviously they said they're gonna test them using DNA, so is there like a limitation of how close the person has to be in the family tree? Like, one of the things we did find is that Gwyn died, so we're saying now she's dead and buried, we can't DNA test her kids to say that she was actually the mother. Like, no, that's like one of the things that happened in the original game, is that she moved away to France with her then husband Wild Bill, and Lauren mentions in her diary that they don't meet her kids until much later, like by the time the kids are grown up. So actually, no one in the family knows that, while she's the mother, and generally it would be harder to say, it's not her kids if someone saw her be pregnant and stuff like that. Actually, no one in the family seen her because she was living away and she didn't return, and they didn't have contact with the family until much later. Yes, Ruby was caught throwing away DNA from Bonnie. They want us to verify, who's certain, who's unlikely, who's too ambiguous. And because Ruby is acting suspicious, they want us to reconsider Anonymom. Now, I did the research about Ruby, and one of the things that was mentioned about her, if I can find it again. Yes, so she was from Portland, and she was an orphan, like she was in the foster care system. And another person in the family tree who was in Portland foster care system is 5Ps. So I am kind of wondering if they know each other in some way, and they have concocted some plan, like, he finds out that his mother had an affair with Guy, and she's the lawyer, so she's like, hey, you could get into lots of money because this family is known for having this arrangement that if you're in the family, you get money. So they get him in. And I mean, he might be a legitimate Roottree. I'm not saying that he cheated his way into that. But they basically unwittingly opened the floodgates. And then there's more and more kids. But obviously more and more kids means less and less money to share. So did she then start trying to eliminate people from the pool so that, he gets a bigger share and hopefully she gets more money too. Although, yes, she's also managed to become the company family lawyer, so obviously she's getting paid for that. Although apparently her fees were low because she just wanted to get in on the opportunity. So if she's getting back pay from him for being included in the family, it's in her interest as well that his cat is bigger. Anyway, that's just my speculation about it. I think what we're gonna start with is just going through the people where we have all of the clues and making decisions about them. So we have Frank here, and we have all of the evidence, which was pointing at the fact that Elias had an affair with someone called Beth/Bess. So that was revealed via the Six Pieces book and the Lawrence diary, that while the mention is that Gwyneth was asking about Beth, the cruelty diary talks about her having a lisp, and therefore in a specific way that her trying to say Bess could have sounded like Beth. We know that she had a young son after writing the book for Elias. I think this one is quite easily marked as a Roottree blood relative. Now, again, I'm not sure where this impossible to prove comes in, because I was expecting it to ask, like, could we get a DNA test by some specific rule? But yeah, there's nothing here saying, oh, you need this sort of distance relative in order to do a DNA test or anything like that. So I'm not sure what that's gonna mean. Now, in case of Stuart and Mark, actually Stuart is not a Roottree. The story for Mary Beth Clementine was that she was big into adoption, and she seemed to genuinely actually adopt her older child. But then when she had another child through an affair with Miracle, she passed it off as an adoption, but basically it was she couldn't tour for a while because of the unusual circumstance of her son's second adoption, which I assume is just basically her hiding for however many months for people not know that she was pregnant. So I think Mark in this case is a Roottree, and again, I don't know how much the DNA testing comes into it, but Miracle Roottree is still alive, so a direct DNA paternity test is possible here. I think 5Ps also might be a Roottree, but I want to find out the rest of the evidence just in case there is some later twists and turns to be discovered. Yeah, in terms of the Garlands, I think the older Garland, so James, is a Roottree, and again, he can be compared to Bonnie's DNA because that's his aunt, so, you know, feels close enough. And then Robert is not a Roottree because he was born after Christine has moved away, and therefore she was no longer around Guy. Then we have more evidence to find, so we're gonna wait for it. We have everything for Flavio. Again, seems quite possible, like the dates for him being born and the dates for Guy visiting to the new Roottree factory in Brazil, they seem to align. And again, this is comparable via Bonnie, so he likely is a Roottree. And then we have the Ford twins. Again, she was working with Guy, then she was married to someone else, but the husband was very suspicious that actually she got pregnant through the affair. So I think they can be confirmed as relatives as well, and there's nothing else to find about them. Yeah, this one is confounding. Like there's a lot to be found. A lot to be found, and therefore, who knows what secrets are hidden there. This is a bit of a left field one, because they're from the original game. Although even in the original game, I did note a few times, maybe it wasn't included in the footage because it didn't need to anything, that yes, they are weirdly marked in terms of, you know, the line is not direct. The line just comes around them, because I guess, yeah, we don't have anyone who can directly confirm that Gwyn indeed was pregnant and had those kids because she was in another country at the time. I think focusing on Min might be the quick one to start off with, because we're only missing 2 things. So yeah, I'm just gonna go do a quick loop around the internet and everything and see what I can find. Okay, so searching Lang Tai, which is the company in China that paired with Roottrees to the distributor Candy there, gives us a new result we haven't had before. It was mentioned in Business Watch lots of time, but there was nothing particularly helpful, other that one of the earlier mentions from 1979 is unusual, as it's not to do with their business, but it's to do with IVF. And basically it goes into the fact that the younger daughter, Shinyo, so that's the one that currently lives in the States as Linda, she couldn't have a child, so the older daughter was basically the surrogate from IVF, and that's Shinyu, who is also the mother of Min. And it specifically mentioned that the older daughter was unmarried, right? So it just brings us back to this whole, she had a child, but she not have a husband, but she was in proximity to guy. And we know what happens when women are in proximity to guy. And that was added as one of the clues. So one more thing to find. Okay, so from the same article about the IVF mention, looking up the company that supposedly did this IVF, brings us to an article about a whistleblower who accused this company of falsifying IVF basically as an alibi, so they could be paid off to say, oh yeah, this person totally got IVF with us, where actually they were already pregnant, and this was just a way to say, this wasn't because of an affair or any sort of out of wedlock activities for unmarried mothers. It was just IVF because she really wanted to have a child. Someone came forward to provide proof that this company was involved in that, and the company was shut down. There is also mention of that in the Business Watch as well. So that's an interesting thing that this links back to Hair, saying, oh yeah, this company was a fraud cover-up, because like she did have Min as an unmarried mother, so if she had another pregnancy, what did that change in terms of, oh, she wanted to cover that one but not this one? And I mean, there's nothing in here to add the other child, which is Mark Han, as a possibility, unless we're just saying she's not the Roottree but he is. She is in college now, so that would make her between like 18, 19, 20 something, which is old enough. Would have been born while Guy was still alive. That is well within the scope for her to be a Roottree, so I think that's fine. I think she is a Roottree. Now, interestingly, the top smoking gun for Hair is the company records from 1980 to 81, but obviously, like, she's not mentioned here. She wasn't working for the company, nor was her mother. So I wonder, what does it go to, right? Like, they're not gonna be mentioned anywhere here. How is this connected to her? Oh, I just had a thought. The expenses for the company for flavor development, $10,000 a month. What if their he was paying the women from company money, like that he had kids with? There is strawberry Zikwa, butterscotch caviar, and I mean, caviar is the real flavor, but he may just have codenamed it after the flavor, and the other flavors he was also going to develop, but it didn't work out. Because it appears in 1980 and then 1981. Let's check the other pages. So we have 78, we have caviar here. And then butterscotch and caviar appears. Okay, before that there are no flavor developments happening. And then after that in 82, sugar plum is 20,000, right? If he had twins with Susan and the standard payoff was 10,000 a month per child, paying 20 sounds like the rate going for twins. Because, I mean, she did say she was being paid off. When this was happening in, like, 75, there were no DNA tests. So I assume standard operating procedure for Guy was his mistress says she's pregnant. And he just like, okay, here's 10K, get out of my life. What does this give us? Can we use those flavors to find more out? Because obviously there was stuff on the internet about caviar. If they're just common words, they're not gonna find it. The only one I'm like suspicious about, like the only one we might be able to know something about is this one. Oh, it's a Chinese word for watermelon. Okay, yeah, that tell us all we need to know. It's paying for min. Which, by the way, I am still confused about how this candy works, because it says it's chocolate maple, which I've never had maple chocolate. Is that an actual thing? Has anyone had maple chocolate? Is it because they're in America, but anytime I hear maple, I'm like Canadian. So yeah, it's chocolate flavored with maple, like they use maple syrup instead of sugar in it or something. But then it also has a flavor on top of that. Isn't maple the flavor? I'm confused. I think it might be time to dive into the inconsistencies and the Anonymom situation. Now, the main thing about it we have still, yes, is that we had the Corinne Schwartz, which again, she was being harassed about being Anonymom, but it wasn't her. She was just the person that vouched for her. So Beatrice Watts might be the actual person, because the story was that they worked together, and that's why Corinne was able to verify. Okay, so we know from Picotet that the Jane Doe Roottree was actually Courtney-May. I don't know what's happening with this highlight. It's completely wrong. Okay, so if her mother's name is Watts and she's Courtney-May, that could be her full name. There we go. Just married. Courtney-May has a simple website with black text on a white background and a few images. From the view counter, you can tell you're one of the only few hundred people who have visited it. She's not shy about claiming she's Jane Doe Roottree. As proof, she has posted an unobscured cover from the time she was featured on Newstime, as well as a different picture of herself that appears to be a wedding photo. The website seems to be created in defense of her mother, who has been the target of public scrutiny. Under the headline, The True Story of Jane Doe Roottree, courtesy of Courtney-May Newton, formerly Watts, okay, so her current name is Newton, because yeah, she has a husband, so we can find about him and put him on the board. Everyone has everything wrong. My mom approached the Roottrees before 5Ps was even on the cover of Newstime. Nobody at the Roottree company took us seriously. They only listened to us after we appeared on TV and in magazines. Again, pointing to this whole, that may have been some sort of scheme by Ruby and 5Ps. The site has a scanned letter from Ruby legal group to Courtney-May's mother Beatrice. In very polite legal terms, it seems to accuse her of exploiting their name and orders her to leave the Roottrees alone. It's dated from weeks before the 5Ps article appeared in Newstime, and it seems legitimate. Okay, so the Ruby Legal Enterprises was involved before 5Ps, so again, she would have known about this whole claims and stuff like that. Further and further suspicious. Courtney-May also discusses her mother's magazine feature in more detail. Do you know how difficult it was to convince anyone to tell our story? My mom didn't want to show her face because everyone in the media we approached assumed she was lying because her story was just like 5Ps but my mom's story was first. Mom was advised by Ryan and Cork to tell Newstime that seeing 5 Ps on the cover was what inspired her to go public. That's the only way Newstime would agree to it and help her get on TV, but it's not true our story was first. Courtney's defense continues, but much of it seems repetitive and useless. Towards the end of the page, she discusses the DNA test and defends her mother's character. My mom is amazing, she's the nicest woman in the world. She has diabetes and works at a department store, but still managed to help pay for my apartment in the big city so that I could stay with my high school sweetheart. I got a degree in nursing, so I learned about DNA in college, but I'm beginning to think it's all a lie. Mom is 100% confident there's nobody else who could have been the father. Either they did the test wrong or DNA is complete BS. She's not a liar, okay? Obviously, yes, if they were cheated, then yes, it might appear that DNA don't work. But yeah, if done correctly, I think we know it works. I assume she doesn't appear in anything else, but let's just be safe and do a full periodical sweep. Okay, nothing. But we go to evidence and we got 2 things. We've got her, and his name is Danny. Okay, so we have Danny Newton as the husband. And this is the original cover of the magazine that was then published, obscured. Okay, so we have them to add. And she's a manager, department store. Okay, retail, yes. And this is hair, Courtney-May. What? And she is a nurse. And her spouse is Daniel Newton. Okay, and we have a picture of him as well. So that sorts this out. There is another clue we don't have. Oh yeah, we can look up Ryan and Cork. We're printing some DNA. Yeah, just a law firm in North Carolina, named after the partners, yeah. Local cases, they represent Anonymom. Section about a case, including a scan of the DNA test results. That she wasn't a Roottree, okay. Yeah, not a 0.5% match, not related. No chance that she was a Roottree. It tested against Bonnie Kellogg, Nee Hudson, so yeah, Guy's twin sister. And yeah, the sample they said was definitely her hair. The company that did the test. No, one of the things you may also notice here is that yeah, she's a redhead. That was a big guy thing, obviously not proof, but yeah, well maybe if the other company was a fraud, this company is also some sort of fraud. Dinn Co. DNA testing company, new phenomenon that allows laboratories to prove a possible familial relationship. According to their website, DNA Co. Yeah, they were responsible for their test that proved that Flavours 5 Ps was a Roottree, and they used it as an example of how a DNA test looks. They used to provide some information about the process. Oh, are we gonna compare the 2 tests and see that they weren't the same? Yeah, they take a sample, put a name on the test with their ID, yeah, with the actual name. Guy Hudson's dead, there was no known source for Guy, but they tested against the Roottree. It says that Jane Doe because it wasn't collected in person, but the Roottree company let them know it was from Bonnie Kellogg. Yeah, but so which means they trusted Rootrees that the DNA sample was good, right? And they didn't verify. There was no chain of custody on the evidence. The left and right arms essentially signatures that match the DNA of the people in question and nobody else. It's a legitimate company. Yes, they don't create fake results, but they can only work with what they were sent, right? So if someone sent a sample for DNA, said this was Bonnie, but actually it was someone else, then that's not good. But also, I like how they just put it on their website, like just doxing his DNA on a public website. Yeah, it's the... Okay, they got permission to post it, good. 19% chance that he was related to Bonnie, who they listed Jane Doe. Yeah, this is his DNA and this is Bonnie's DNA, supposedly. Yeah, so if we compare the Bonnie Kellogg sample that was used for Anonymom's and Jane Doe Roottree test and the Bonnie sample they used for 5Ps, those samples are not the same. Like there are completely different numbers for all of those sections, which means yes, this sample was incorrect. Like they are not both from Bonnie. For the board, we're still missing 3 things about 5Ps. We could say we know she got money, right? She was able to buy a house and whatever, and like she wasn't exactly making giant money. And from the company records, we know he was paying. So 78 he was paying caviar, and then 79 he was paying butterscotch and caviar. But there's more to find. So for 5Ps, we're still missing some of the clues. And again, he is connected to the company records, I guess through the fact that his mother is mentioned in those records here. But interestingly, this is before the payoff starts, so either she didn't make a claim or he wasn't yet coding it in. Because yeah, the first child is caviar, if this is to be correct, which actually yeah, it's probably not Flavio then, because this is before Flavio was even born. Like it just seemed to align with the two. Then so yeah, in 1980 we got strawberry and Sigua, and then butterscotch, and he's still paying for caviar. And then the next year sugar plum gets added, which we know is the twins. So this is the flavors in order of appearance. Now obviously there may have been some time arrangement, because you know it depends when the women came to him and asked him to be paid. But if we look, this is like a throwback all the way back to the start of the game. Originally we had the 5 pieces, the original kids. The 5-piece candy was named after all of the kids, so the flavors matched the initials of the kids. Now, the flavors match the initials of the mothers. Caviar, Christine. We have butterscotch for Beatrice then. Then we have strawberry comes first for Sonia Alves here, but again, that might be due to the timing of when they contact him and stuff like that, because we have Sigua for Xinyu here, and yes, then we have sugar plum for Susan, double pay twins. Yeah, so he's doing the I'm Elias, but instead of actually adding flavors for the 5 pieces, he just ends up paying off the mothers with the company money. And only flavor he made was caviar, and that only succeeded in certain territories. But where that leaves us is there is no J flavor, no anything. Again, could be because she didn't submit anything to him, she didn't ask him for money, but we still have the DNA samples where we know the 2 people they submitted as supposedly Bonnie are not the same person. So very, very suspicious, but I think that confirms that Courtney is a Roottree because Beatrice is butterscotch. That's basically it. But now we still need to find those remaining clues for 5Ps. Okay, so researching 5Ps, there's an article in Teen Blast. He's popular and attractive enough that even though his music is not targeted toward teen girls, they seem to be paying attention anyway. while he hasn't done any interviews with the magazine, they listed him among hanky hotties for the past few months with small bios that tell you various facts about him. This includes his real name David and his birthday. Okay, 1977 is when he was born, so that's where it places him on the timeline. And he's an Aquarius, and he grew up in foster care in Portland. A letter to the editor also claims it's not possible that he was born in 1977, as he claimed on a song called 17 Magazine that he turned 17 in 1992. That was also like the other one with the jumping. Yes, I can jump, right? Like between 92 and 94. The editor response was stating that they've reached out to his agent to ask about the song and were told it wasn't performed by Five Piece and that they shouldn't print rumors. Okay, sassy sass. Okay, so his other name, Dirty Davy, in the Portland Telegraph leads us to this mention about the landmark called the Fountain of Youth. We found this, it was connected to Ruby before in one of the articles about hair. Apparently the unveiling of the fountain, the mayor of Portland made a speech and there were performances by multiple local entertainers, as well as a ribbon cutting from the people most instrumental in bringing the fountain into fruition. The article calls out that all the performers and speakers were foster care alumni and most of them grew up together as close friends. So yeah, they weren't only in foster care together, they were in foster care and they were close friends. Includes poets, musicians and dancers. Dirty Davy was listed as one of the musicians. So yeah, the Ruby was the designer of this fountain, right? She came up with this idea. We've had this in the previous search. Making change for the foster care system. She designed this fountain and it was actually created and like it raises money for the foster care. So again, they know each other. They are in something together. And then yeah, she gets in with the Roottrees and all of this starts. Okay, so the 17 magazines, sometimes referred to as 17 magazine, title of an unreleased and controversial song by Dirty Davy. There's mentions of it on a few sites, claiming it was the first release of his first mixtape, but was removed. There's no audio or visual evidence of it existing, but there are independent accounts from people who have claimed to have heard it, and they do generally line up. According to their recollection, it was about many different loosely connected occurrences of the number 17, mostly violent. The intro states it was written on Davy's 17th birthday and involved a fictional but glorified series of murders at a fashion show for a teenage magazine with a similar name to the song title. That leaves us with only one thing that we don't have yet. Okay, I can't quite find what this is supposed to be. Like, it might be like a search of a search I've already done, something like that, and I just can't get it. It seems to be a spider search, and I can't get nothing of the 17 magazines. So I may have just like missed a sub search on one word, and I can't like brute force into it. But I think it's safe to say he's not a Roottree. Him and Ruby concocted a plan based off her knowledge of the family and knowledge of like legal things, and she had an in, so it's not him. So that sorts this board. Another thought actually is here I went with, oh yeah, he's a blood relative, but actually he is dead. If we look him up, he died at the age of 74, and if we're saying we're going to use DNA to prove it, he is dead. His children and grandchildren are still alive, but we can't get his DNA to test against anyone, so we're gonna go with it might be him, but there's no way we can prove this one way or another. I guess it would be like it could be done through testing his kids against some of the family, but there are like multiple hopes, right? Because if he's descended directly from Elias, then it would have to be tested against someone who would be someone's half, like second cousin somewhere, right? Because a lot of the people are dead. Like all of the 5 pieces are dead. Well, some is still alive, but again, yes, it would be like quite far removed, so we don't know how far the DNA reaches, and yes, it would be a child of someone who we're trying to confirm. So I think that's where the possible maybe, but we can't tell, is used. Now, the strange bit with the Ronald and Robert, and the fact that we're missing a lot of evidence, because I wasn't really researching them, right? They didn't seem relevant to what the Roottreemania was about. So time to get on that case. I did actually made a page just because they were mentioned. One of them being a conspiracy theory that Gwen didn't die, but I think she died. So yeah, let's like just start with the basic of researching them on the spider search and seeing where that takes us. So yeah, it's just a page about her, and she was in the movie called Guys Like Us. And yeah, I'm gonna re-highlight everything, even though we already know about it, because I don't know which things are supposed to be looked into again. Yeah, so she moved to Paris, and then she wasn't really out there anymore. Yeah, she died peacefully in her sleep. She had pneumonia because she was older. Then let's look up this movie. Yeah, 2 secretaries that pretend to be men so they can get jobs. It was released on home video due to Roottreemania. Okay, so that's been updated. The time it took to manufacture and ship VHS copies of Guys Like Us meant it missed the height of the craze, which only lasted a few weeks. Even though it did sell modestly well, and there have been talks of a remake. Okay, can we look that up? Yeah, remake has been discussed a few times on the website about upcoming film names movie news. The logo is a cow on a film canister. The rumored cast is Cameron Diaz, and they're all originated by Gwyn, Linda, Fiorentino, and Chris O'Donnell. According to Leak News, the remake has been put on indefinite hiatus due to its director, who is speculated to be Ron Roottree, dropping out in the wake of a serious medical issue. That's only a rumor, okay? Ron is having medical issues. Well, let's search him up as well. Yeah, so he was the announced president, but then they took him out because he was just doing it so he could finally get rid of Robbie. Yeah, his mother died, and him and his brother made amends. Okay, actually, let's look up Robbie again. Yeah, he's in prison in France. He's not returned. Yeah, death of our mother was hard on our family. They're spending time together as brothers. Yeah, recovery for addiction. Okay, well, we're going to the periodicals then to find them again. Okay, what are some other people names connected? Well, we have Ronald's wife and children. I assume maybe not the children, but I guess we also have Gwyn's husband. We don't know whether he's alive or not. That's his full name, but he was the Wild Bill. And then actually, if we go back to this, yeah, there were the other people mentioned that were in the movie, so that might lead us to something as well. Okay, so this is also updated. So she's a comedian, part of a recent fundraiser at the Reno Comedy Club, the Laugh Lounge. The fundraiser was called Best Medicine and was to help find cure for Huntington's disease. According to the website, she raised a statement. Up until recently, I didn't know anything about Huntington's. In the last few months, I've gone from knowing nothing about it to learning more than any one person should ever have to. Until less than a decade ago, it was impossible to predict if someone susceptible to Huntington's had the disease, but due to the advances in medicine, tests have been developed. Hopefully this increases awareness in the first step into finding a cure. Please join me for a night of comedy for a good cause. Okay, but why is she suddenly so interested in this? Yeah, neurodegenerative disease causes memory issues, uncontrollable movement in limbs. After symptoms onset between 30 and 50, people live under 15 to 18 years. There is no cure. It's passed genetically from parent to child. The gene that causes Huntington's works in such a way that if the parent has the disease, there's a 50-50 chance that their child will get it. Huntington's cannot be passed on recessively, meaning it cannot skip a generation. In other words, if someone has a mother or father with Huntington's, but they themselves did not receive it from their parent, their children and their grandchildren so will never have it. This is a clue that we will need to link someone having the disease, and then whether they have it or not would prove their relation to someone. But then if they have kids, we can't just use the kids to then do further tests, like something like that. Okay, well, it is Ron's wife that's raising the money for the disease, so it's possible either Gwyn had it, and that's why she suddenly died, or Ron has it then. How would I find this out? Well, let's just keep looking for the other people and see if anything comes up. So Wild Bill, he was known for the Fortune Favors the Grave. He did not make an appearance at Gwyn's funeral. Because of his absence, there were rumors online he must have already died, but according to a reporter, they tracked him down. He's in his 70s, lives in Paris, and he's in perfectly fine health. Okay, so Wild Bill does not have Huntington's, and therefore, if Ron has Huntington's, then possibly they're not related. But that wouldn't matter, right? Because Gwyn is the Roottrie link. It sort of doesn't matter if Wild Bill is the father or not. It would matter that Gwyn is not the mother. A few years I spent with Gwyn were just one stop along a very long and complicated journey that has been my life and career. The last time we spoke was when I signed the divorce papers. She asked me to never contact her or the kids again. I've always respected those wishes. They never reached out to me either, even as adults, so I have to assume they had the same idea of why she hated me as much and the sacrifices she made on my behalf. I wish them well, and I'm sorry for their loss, but we've been strangers for 40 years, so I can confidently say they wouldn't have wanted me to be there. In fact, I'm confident my presence would have ruined it. Okay, so he just didn't want to intrude. Okay, Harrison Lane is just outdated stuff. Yeah, Leslie, this is a newer page. She was in the movie with Gwyn. With the success and acclaim, she retired from Hollywood almost immediately after her co-starring role. Not much was known about her, but recently, when Guys Like Us was re-released right at the tail end of Roottreemania, recently, as part of the myriad of articles and research people have done into those surrounding the Roottrees, it came out that she died of a genetic disease known as Huntington's in the late 1960s. Interesting. So, did Gwyn maybe taken her child? Like, did Gwyn taken Ronald, and now he has Huntington's, so that's how I know. I mean, I don't actually know that Ronald has Huntington's. I'm just taking that from, she's looking into Huntington's, right? Like, she's like, I know everything about Huntington's now. How do I find out if Ron has Huntington's? Where would that be available? Unless we just take it from, well, until recently they weren't so good with their brother-in-law, so it's more likely her husband. Yeah, okay, so that got us quite a lot. We're only missing three of the things to do with them. I'm just trying to recall like what my searching was for in the original game about them, because there was more about them, right? There was like, they were arguing. Can we look at the older article? Head of our productions, and yeah, there was Brother Trouble, and no projects other than the remake. This is old. What are the other things? Yeah, this is the old article, talks about Wild Bill being a bit of a guy and also just going left and right having kids, having affairs, going left and right having affairs, and that's probably why Gwyn divorced him. But yeah, in this case that doesn't matter if he had other kids. Now, if we assume that Penelope's doing fundraising into Huntington's because her husband's affected, right? Then that would imply he is not Gwyn's child. That would imply that he is Leslie's child that Gwyn takes in after she dies from Huntington's, and therefore he is not a Roottrie. But then Robert is. Ronald tried to get Robbie kicked out of the trust because Robbie was born after the divorce, even though it still implied that like she was already pregnant while they were married. They just split up after. But then the irony is that he's actually not the Roottree, but his brother is. Okay, so I think that sorts all of them out. I think it's time to say we are ready. I assume Sam and Clark are coming back to tell us if we're wrong or not. One final booyah!
Beatrice and Courtney-May. Clark, can you swing another test against Bonnie's DNA?
This time I'll be sure to have them verify both samples in person.
Using the family tree you filled out, as well as DNA tests, we were able to uncover the truth behind all the inconsistencies. Clark's handling the business, but I've come to thank you and fill you in on everything we've learned. Buckle up, because it's been one heck of a week. Actually, that's an understatement. It's not every week you discover your family company is being sabotaged by someone they trusted. But that's the kind of time we've been having. Like I said, buckle up. Maybe grab some popcorn. We'll start with Guy Hudson. Guy had a frankly ridiculous number of potential children. What shocked me is how many graduated from potential to confirmed. We can even prove he was aware of them. The smoking gun was how he used company money to pay off a lot of women. He hid it with a method inspired by his idol, Elias. 5-piece flavors. The flavors he was paying to research were a ruse. He developed flavors based on the initials of the women he was paying, which was really stupid, considering one of their names started with X. Let's start with Christine. Guy was paying her under the name Caviar, but there were some other clues. James was born 9 months after Zach's party. Christine was there with Guy, and when she got pregnant, she panicked. Steve stepped up. He even turned it into one of his recipe stories. Not all of Guy's affairs led to offspring. He may have slept with Robin Martin, but she didn't have children, so we'll never know. Also, not every child of Guy's affair partners were his. Robert Garland was born after his parents had already moved to Boston. Skipping Beatrice for now. Up next is Leng Xin-Yu. When Guy showed up in China, she was into America. And Americans. Dare I say redheads, even? When she got pregnant, her father paid key genes to fake IVF. They claimed her sister was unable to conceive. But her sister and Jerry had their own son, Mark. Sonia Alves was soon after. Nia was married at a very young age to a much older husband. She resented him. I don't blame her. They allegedly spent no time together in private. Guy was in Brazil during Christmas 1979. It's the only Christmas not in the records. Flavio was born 9 months later, and like the others, Guy started paying Sonia. Last was Susan Ford, hired to translate for Guy's overseas trips. It's easy to read into Guy's donation to her school, but there's no definitive proof there. She and Guy were witnessed together near the end of his life. Susan's husband was convinced he couldn't be the father of her daughters. Guy, though, paid double. The price of twins. So, what about 5 Ps? Felix Fellow's mother, Joanna, doesn't have a 5 pieces flavor. On top of that, his story doesn't really add up. His mother already left the company by the time Guy became president, and his lyrics indicate he was born sometime around 1975. Alone, that wouldn't necessarily prove it, but there are some suspicious connections between Felix and the company's current lawyer, Ruby Spratt. They both grew up in Portland, in foster care, and according to the local paper, they definitely knew one another. Ruby was the one who approached the Roottrees to begin with. It was all a setup. Ruby and Felix saw my book's challenge to the Clancet Trust as an opportunity. His mother really had worked for Roottree, and Ruby was a respected lawyer. She exploited my family's greed, worked her way into control of the trust, and ensured Felix got a piece. But they made some mistakes along the way. If you look at the 2 DNA tests that Ruby handled, they were both supposedly tested against Bonnie Hudson. But the 2 signatures that should both represent Bonnie don't match. After Clark and I confronted her, Ruby lawyered up. Ironic, I know. We suspect Ruby had Donatico test Felix against his own mother's DNA. He had a hairbrush of hers. They sent the female sample in remotely. On the second test, Bonnie's sample was tested locally, but Courtney-May's was not. Ruby's been throwing away samples. We think she sent her own hair instead of Courtney-May's, but it could have been anyone's. Ruby and Felix were in cahoots. As for why, they were both advocates of wealth redistribution. A noble effort, but once they controlled the family fortune, they became just as greedy as the worst members of my family. The money corrupted them. They were so eager to personally wield the wealth for their own cause that they sabotaged any other claims. That finally brings us to Anonymom, aka Beatrice Watts. Her tales of guys, parties, and payoffs were true. She even approached Ruby before 5Ps was on news time. Ruby used Beatrice's truths to make Felix's lies feel real, then ruined the DNA test so that Beatrice looked phony in the public court of opinion. I feel worst for her in all of this. While Ruby and Felix stole the show, there were some other potential new family members as well. Miracle Roottree was less of an open and shut case. That said, it's very likely he had a son with Mary Beth Clementine. Not Stuart. Mary Beth adopted him before she ever set foot in Butler County. That leaves Mark. The timeline fits. He showed up about 9 months after Mary Beth visited Miracle, and the basket baby story is a bit too convenient. If that's not enough on its own, he was also bailed out by the sister of Edith Roottree, Miracle Jr.'s wife, after she changed her name to win that silly contest. Our best guess is that Mark was told by his mother whose son he was, and used that fact to put some pressure on Miracle Jr. We have no real proof of that, but nothing else really makes sense for why they'd be connected in that way. Elias's affair was the most ambiguous. Gwyneth was able to coerce Elias to do things he wouldn't have otherwise done, like pressure to include me in the family. My son even mentioned them arguing about someone named Beth. Combined with Gwyneth's lisp, it's possible the name was actually Bess. Unfortunately, all we know about Bess Williams is that she wrote his book and died not long after, leaving her only son an orphan. The timeline fits with Wildcat, but there's no record if she had any other relationship. Honestly, I wouldn't say we had enough evidence either way. I wouldn't be surprised if Elias cheated. Of course, I'm a bit biased. Regardless, we haven't gotten in touch with any of the Williams clan yet. That means we haven't been able to do a DNA test. As Clark mentioned, from here on out, all of our DNA tests will be in person, for both parties. Lastly, we have a bit of a curveball. Ron Roottree isn't related to us by blood. Gwyn was definitely pregnant, so it's likely Robbie is. When Ron and Robbie went to visit their mother at the end of her life, something changed. Additionally, there have been a few rumors circling around Ron. RR Productions canceled the Guys Like Us remake due to the director's illness. At the same time, Ron's wife Penelope began doing benefits for Huntington's disease, stating that she had become familiar with it. Huntington's is the same disease that Gwyn's former co-star Leslie Florence had. It's passed from parent to child. It can't skip a generation. Because Gwyn and Wild Bill didn't have Huntington's, and Ron seems to, it's impossible Gwyn was his mother. I recently confirmed all this with Ron. At the end of her life, Gwyn told Ron the story. Leslie and Bill had an affair the same year Leslie learned she had Huntington's. Leslie got pregnant. Leslie wasn't likely to survive to see her child grow up, and even if she did, she didn't want to be a burden. She begged Gwyn and Wild Bill to adopt her child. Gwyn did. Mere weeks after she found out she was having her own son, she also took in Ron. Wild Bill was a problem. Unreliable and a serial adulterer. Gwyn divorced him and never saw him again. Gwyn had already told Starlet she was pregnant, so it never really made waves when people saw her with a child in Paris. There was gossip during her divorce when she was discovered to be pregnant again. In actuality, it was the final months of her only pregnancy. To lay low, she stayed in Paris long enough that even her own family never had reason to question the timeline. It's one heck of a story, and frankly nobody could be expected to piece the timeline together. Not with what few mentions of Gwyn's past have survived. But the Huntingtons itself? That's proof. Ron suing Robbie to remove him from the Clancid Trust was a huge moment in my story, and a major catalyst for this entire investigation. Finding out that it's been pretty much backwards this whole time has been a bit surreal. So that's where we're at. Looking over the information you sent us was invaluable. You got everything absolutely correct. Why did we even bother hiring a team? You figured it all out solo. All this information, this entire story, it's a lot, in more ways than one. Some of it has the potential to destroy marriages and ruin relationships. We're handling it all very, very carefully, but we couldn't have gotten here without you. And with that, I guess our tale has finally, truly come to an end. What a strange one it was. No words can express how grateful I am to you for untangling this mess. Honestly, I've had enough of my family's eccentricities and scandals for one lifetime. I imagine you have as well. And if not, well, there's always Elias's and Gwyneth's brothers and sisters.
Okay, well, that is it. That is truly the end of the Roottrees Are Dead, Roottreemania, and yeah, well, that was quite a ride, quite a fun ride, getting into all of the family dirt, family secrets, everything like that, finding clues, but yeah, I mean, some of the little bits, like, it gets a bit frustrating with like, oh yeah, what is this last piece of something I need to find that's just hidden somewhere, I don't know where, but yeah, you can solve the game without it. Like, there were things I was missing in the original game that I've managed to figure things out without, and there are things like I missed in Roottreemania and I still figure everything out. So yeah, I mean, this is a great investigation game, and I'm glad it got made, and I'm glad I got to play it, and I hope the creators go forward and make other interesting things, similar or, you know, maybe completely different in terms of gameplay, but it's still like investigation game. But yeah, that will be it. There's nothing more to find. There's nothing more to play. I mean, actually, I lied. There is apparently some extra thing in there that's called like Family Doku, where it's basically like little side stories. I've at some point looked at it where it like led to a series of books about something, but the game like warns you multiple times that this isn't anything to do with the main story. This is like fun mini games, but like there's already so much content in this game that I omitted looking into it for video reasons. So I guess if you somehow watch this whole video and you play the game, but you know nothing about it, then you can go back and see if you can find that yourself and see what it is about. Yeah, I guess I have to find something else to play, and therefore I will see you soon on another adventure.